Testing, 1 2 1 2. All right, shalom, shalom. All right, first and foremost, I want to say, call halal yamla, Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Hawar Hakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders, a great millstone that I learned this truth from. And also peace and salutations to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. All right, shalom, Shabbat shalom. Okay, we're the Hebrew Israelites. We come out on the streets of America, known as Babylon Great, according to Bible prophecy, and as well like-minded brothers throughout the four corners of the earth. Okay, we've been raised up to the Holy Spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai, okay, to preach the everlasting gospel according to the Bible. All right, the Holy Bible. Okay, the Holy Bible, which entails what? Okay, the destruction and divine judgment upon America, which is known as Babylon the Great, according to end time prophecy, and as well the deliverance and salvation of the Lord's elect, the elect of his people, all right, the elect of the nation of Israel, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, low and not big in number. Okay, and all of these things are all going to transpire upon the return of Yahweh Shai, whom this world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. Okay, and as I always like to start off in the book of 2nd Ezra, book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 15, in verse 1, it says, "Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true." The words of Yahweh Shema Shai, according to the Holy Bible, when it's all said and done, are going to be found faithful and true. Okay, as Scripture says in Peter's, we have a more sure word of prophecy. Okay, and as the Scriptures also says, it's impossible for the Most High to lie, right? Because everything that Yahweh Shema Shai speaks of in the Scriptures through the mouth of his prophets and his men, okay, are not going to come back unto him void, as it speaks of in Isaiah 55. But instead, what? It's going to accomplish all that Yahweh Shema Shai has sent it forth to do. All right. So 2nd Ezra 15 and verse 3, it says, "Fear not the imaginations against thee, let not the incredulity of them trouble thee that speak against thee." It says, "For all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness." All right. And hey, we already seen many of the unfaithful amongst our people, the 2/3, dying, okay, and going back to the spirit world in their unfaithfulness. All right. As of recently, we've seen this guy, Prince of Power, go back to the spirit world, okay, because of what? Coming up against the apostles and the bishops and the elders of Great Millstone, all right, coming up against the truth, okay. He taught that the heathen nations can receive salvation and be saved in this and the third, okay. Well, the Lord pretty much got rid of him, okay. The Lord got rid of him, and he's just another example among many examples in these latter days of what the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai is going to do to the false prophets and the flunkies and the flukes amongst this Hebrew Israelite ministry. Those that are now preaching the 100% doctrine, 100% gospel, 100% truth, right? Preaching the right thing, occupied in prophecy, right? Focus on the kingdom and feeding the Lord's sheep. Those that are within this Hebrew Israelite ministry that's not doing these things, okay, in truth and sincerity to Yahweh Shema Shai, and the Lord's gonna get them out the way, okay? Point blank, period. Because like I said again, 2nd Ezra 15 and verse 4, "For all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness." Okay, roughly paraphrasing, Salakia, a point blank, period. You see? Hey, because at this point in the game, okay, as we clearly see end time prophecy unfolding, all right, as we see America, Babylon the Great, falling along with its NATO and EU allies. Okay, we see this whole entire beast system crumbling, okay, down to the core, right? We see end time prophecy coming to pass inside of days. We see the MOTB is right around the corner, along with World War III. All right, this dude right here. Okay, all these things also let us, the hopeful elect, know what? that the return of Yahweh Shai, is nigh as well. Okay, so these things, okay, should boost our faith more and more in these other days. Okay, and that's what have us more and more rooted in faith to Yahweh Shema Shai in these other days. Okay, at this point, nothing should be able to separate you from the love of Yahweh Shema Shai in these other days. Whether it be some money, a job, a woman, family issues, okay, a thorn in the flesh, whatever you're going through, okay, whatever you go through in these other days should not separate you from Yahweh Shema Shai. Okay, at least what? You're gonna die in your unfaithfulness. All right. So as you can see from the theme of today's camp, okay, the end of the line for E, okay, which is who? Esau Edom. All right. Because we're at the end of Esau's system. Okay, we're at the end of Esau's world. As scriptures. Okay, let's go back to 2nd Ezra. All right. 2nd Ezra 6. And we'll start at verse 7. 2nd Ezra 6 and verse 7. It says, Then answered I and said, What shall be the parting asunder of the times? Or when shall be the end of the first and the beginning of it that followeth? Okay, verse 8. All right, verse 8, it says, And he said unto me, From Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau. Okay, Jacob's hand held our forefather Jacob, okay, held on to the heel of Esau Edom. Okay, and it says, all right, and ultimately, what did that represent? As it says in verse 9, For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. Okay, and we're at the end of Esau Edom's world, the so-called white man. Okay, look at everything that's going on around the world. Look at everything that's going on, even within this system. Okay, within here, America, Babylon the Great. Okay, within this NATO and EU allies. All right, there's division all over the place. Okay, disagreements. One side against another. The whole left versus right, Democrat versus Republican. Okay, Europe and the EU come slowly but surely coming up against America. All right, and everything is all divided up in these other days. All right, in Esau's world. Okay, and as a matter of fact, speaking of division, right? I have this article I'm going to show here on the screen that popped up on my phone earlier today. Okay, let me pull it up. All right, this is from. All right, Lord willing, y'all can see this. This is from the Newsbreak app. This popped up on my phone earlier this morning. As you can see from the title, or Lord willing, y'all can see this. It says a so-called whites only, all right, no J's community says it's found a legal loophole, and then it says a J-ish lawmaker, all right, a small hat lawmaker in Pennsylvania wants to close it. I'm gonna let y'all see it again, okay? And so I'll just read a little bit because I don't want to, go all into this article. But it says a J-ish, all right, a small hat Pennsylvania lawmaker has introduced a bill to clarify that housing developments like Return to the Land, all right, a so-called whites only, no J's community in northern Arkansas are illegal in his state. Okay. And so, without, going all into this article and things like that, ultimately these things show what? That there's division within the nation of Esau Edom at an all-time high, even between, okay, the regular everyday, American Edomites versus the small hats. Okay. Esau Edom, the regular everyday Edomite, okay, the regular everyday so-called Christian Edomite is even coming against their small hat counterparts. Okay. Look this back up. All right. And, of course, what did our Lord and Savior, Yahweh Shai, say in the scriptures about a kingdom divided? All right. Matthew 12 verse 25, it says, and Yahushua knew their thoughts and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. Okay? And it says, and if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? Okay, question mark. So that's always saying within this Edomite power structure in these outer days. From here in America, Babylon the Great, throughout the NATO, throughout the EU, okay, these Edomites are coming up against their small hat counterparts, right? The so-called Jays. And there's all kinds of, all these things represent what? Division, okay? That just passed. All right? All these things represent what? A kingdom divided, okay? And as we read this verse in the NLT, all right, Matthew 12 and 25 in the NLT, it says, Yahushua knew their thoughts and replied, any kingdom divided by civil war is doomed. All right, and that's coming to America. You already see that environment brewing up more and more each day. All right, the whole left versus right, Democrat versus Republican. Okay, civil war is being brewed up more and more in Babylon the Great in these outer days, especially as of 2025. Okay, and guess what? It's going to brew up even more in 2026. And Lord willing, shit pop off in 2026. Okay, no more this talking, no more this this whole back and forth in the internet. All right, Lord willing, we see judgments pop off throughout the streets of America at an all-time high in 2026. Okay, people getting off the internet, getting off the keyboards, right, and taking it to the streets. Okay, to further accelerate prophecy and fulfill the will of the Lord. All right, it says Matthew 12 and 25 again in the NLT. It says, Yahushua knew their thoughts and replied, any kingdom divided by civil war is doomed. A town or family splintered by feuding will fall apart. Okay, and again, that's what's going on. Feuding, okay, back and forth, division, disagreements, okay, between these regular everyday Edomites with the whole left versus right, Republican versus Democrat, okay, which according to Revelation 13 are just nothing but two horns like a lamb that's both getting ready to speak as a dragon. Okay, take away all you people's constitutional rights, take away all you people's freedoms, especially your First Amendment rights, your Second Amendment rights, your Fourth Amendment rights, which is your rights to privacy, right? All your so-called constitutional rights, okay? Because of what, as Yahushua said, okay, a town or family splintered by feuding will fall apart, okay? And again, we also see feuding going on between the average everyday Edomite and the small hats, all right? It says, verse 26, and if Satan is casting out Satan, he is divided and fighting against himself, all right? His own kingdom will not survive, all right? These regular everyday Edomites, especially these so-called Christian Edomites, all right? Sooner or later, the Lord's gonna make it manifest that they're nothing but children of Satan, right along with their small head counterparts. Okay, but it's just the Lord is just using these Edomites, these Christian Edomites, to further speak out against the agenda of their elites, right? Their leaders, the small hats. Okay, make their own tongue fall upon themselves, as it speaks of in Psalm 64. Okay, and further prove that the testimony of the men of the Lord, okay, starting with the apostles and the bishops and the elders of Great Millstone, down to the least of us that are of the hopeful elect. All right, all these things are going to show forth throughout the earth before it's all said and done, that the men of Yahweh Shema Shai, us the hopeful elect, okay, this testimony that we've been preaching this whole time is faithful and true, okay, that those small hats are not the true chosen people of the Lord, okay, these Edomites, the Lord is not dealing with these Edomites, so-called white people, right? No matter how much they call themselves Christians, Catholic, Protestants, whatever. The Lord is not dealing with Esau, Edom, all these Christians whatsoever. Okay? Hey, and matter of fact, and guess what? All this this shameful spewing that we're seeing on Amalek in these other days as well, right? And overall Esau, Edom, across the board, but ultimately Amalek, the small heads, all right? All this shameful spewing that we've been seeing on Amalek over these past few years, especially over this past year, 2025. And it's all ultimately going to lead to this. Okay, let me pull it up real quick. Okay, all this shameful spewing and all this exposure that we've been seeing against the small hats all throughout this year, going forward. Okay, they call all you know, it's all before it's all said and done going to lead to this. This is Hosea chapter 1 and verse 10. It says, "Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, Ye are not my people," which, hey, now was said to us here in America, Babylon the Great. Okay, it was said to so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans here in the shores of America that we're not the Lord's people, but instead what? We're black, okay, Latino, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, Mexican, Native American, okay, and through pseudoscience and false narratives, Esau, as uses pseudoscience to label us as niggas, wetbacks, spics, okay, savages, inferior, low IQs, right? All these things, all these narratives Esau either put upon our people, okay, to make the whole world believe that we're not the Lord's chosen people. But the Lord said what? Okay, the middle part of Hosea 1 verse 10 again, "And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, Ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, Ye are the sons of the living power." Okay, and at the end of the spewing upon Esau's glory, especially the spewing that's upon Amalek's glory, the small hats. Okay, this whole world, the Lord's gonna put a spirit on these people before it's all said and done, to realize and acknowledge that so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans are the true chosen people. Okay, the true JEWs according to the scriptures. All right, because hey, again, right now you see these Edomites, especially these Christian Edomites, these MAGA hat wearing, Americanized so-called Christian Edomites, cursing out the small hats. Okay, condemning them. Okay, slowly but surely realizing that their guy Trump and his whole government has been bought out by the small hats. All right, these Edomites are doing everything in their power to to avoid admitting that those small hats are not the true chosen people of the Lord. Hey, but guess what? The Lord's is gonna put a spirit on them before it's all said and done, for these people to acknowledge and profess that we are the true Israelites of the Bible. Okay, and everything that we, the hopeful elected men of the Lord, have been preaching all throughout these years have been faithful and true. Okay, according to the Holy Scriptures. All right, but overall, again, all these things that's happening throughout the earth, especially within Esau's beast system, within Esau's kingdom, from the shameful spewing upon Esau's glory, the shameful spewing upon Amalek, right? The average everyday American Edomite catching hell, right? Losing their job left and right, going through all types of financial turmoil, right? Getting on social media, getting on the internet, complaining, crashing out in their cars. All these things, okay, let us know that, hey, Esau Edom is at the end of the line. Okay, we're at the end of Esau's rulership. All right, and as a matter of fact, even looking down at what's going on over there in Venezuela. Okay, you got Trump using the military to pretty much regain control over Venezuela's oil, right? Seizing control over their oil tankers, right? Which is what that whole war was all about from the get go, anyway. Okay, they use the guise of all Venezuela is getting on boats and bringing drugs to America, and has been proven a farce. Okay, and mind you, that's not to say that Venezuela isn't doing wickedness down there against the U.S. But okay, we know that Esau Edom is a master of using propaganda, using false narratives to justify coming with the sword. Okay, justify waging war. All right, and doing all kinds of wickedness and violence and unrighteousness throughout the earth for the purpose of gain and his own self-interest. But right now, okay, down there in Venezuela, all right, the dominance of the West, okay, the dominance of America is being challenged. Okay, as you have what going on down there in Venezuela. Now Russia and China are getting involved with Venezuela, okay, to protect Venezuela. All right, and mind you, more so to protect their oil interests in Venezuela. Okay, because mind you as well, at the end of the day, you know, who primarily inhabits Venezuela, as well as the rest of South America? Mostly Israelites. Okay, mainly the tribes of Asher as well as Naphtali. Okay, Israelites, right? So you best believe, although Russia and China is getting themselves involved with the whole feud between the U.S. and Venezuela, protecting Venezuela, but at the end of the day, they're not down there to protect the people of Venezuela per se. You know, those tribes down there in Venezuela, Asher, Naphtali, so on and so forth. They're only down there to protect their own interests down there in Venezuela as well as South America, which is what? Their oil resources and whatever natural other natural mineral resources that's down there in South America. Okay? But overall, these things show what? That the dominance of America is now being challenged throughout the earth. Okay? As a matter of fact, let's get this. Okay, the dominance of the West and the dominance of Esau Edom is now being challenged on the earth in latter days. Okay, this is Jeremiah chapter 50, and matter of fact, I'll start at verse 21. Okay, Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 21. It says, "Go up against the land of Marathiam." Okay, even against it. All right, and when you go into Marathiam in the Hebrew in the blue letter, okay, it's literally pronounced just as that, Marathiam, and it means what? Double rebellion. Okay, double rebellion, and it also as well goes into bitterness, as you have the root word of Marathiam, which is mar, okay, which is the Hebrew word for bitterness. Okay, so not only is America spiritually called Marathiam, along with Babylon the Great, okay, this place is likened to a double rebellion, all right, as well as double bitterness, okay. This place, America, Babylon the Great, is Babylon on steroids, okay. The energy of Nimrod on steroids, okay, which Nimrod means what? Rebellion, okay. Well, as the prophet Jeremiah right here called this place Marathiam, he basically called this place double rebellion, double Nimrod, okay. And as we see Esau Edom, as he's at the end of his rulership, at the end of his blessing, Esau Edom is attempting to build a modern day spiritual Tower of Babel via what? The NWO agenda, okay, along with coming with the Charagma, shutting everything down, implementing a worldwide global digital system, digital grid, digital IDs, and all these things, all for the purpose of what? Okay, control, mass surveillance, all right, controlling how people travel, controlling people's access to this, that, and the third, right? Controlling the people's abilities to buy and sell, right? Tracking people, tracing people. Okay, he's trying to be, Esau is the new tyrant of the earth, just as Nimrod was a tyrant during his day. Okay, he was a tyrant, oppressor, as well as a mighty hunter. Okay, not only a mighty hunter of animals in the wild, but ultimately what? A mighty hunter of souls. Okay, well, guess what? In Genesis 25, the scripture tells you that Esau was a mighty hunter as well, a man of the field. All right, hunting animals. But guess what? In his outer days, Esau Edom looks at people as animals. Okay, especially the small heads. They look at the average person throughout the earth as goyim. Okay, which the proper Hebrew word for goyim is really gawayam. Okay, that's how you pronounce Gentile in the Hebrew, gawayam, which goes into, okay, in one sense, it could be talking about Israelite, like into Gentiles, right? And then, generally, it's also talking about the actual heathen nations. But also, when you go into that word Gawayam, which the small has called Goyim, it also goes into cattle, okay? And that's how Esau Edom, starting with this elite, look at the average person throughout the earth as cattle, as animals, okay? Things that are meant to be hunted, tracked down, traced, right? Tagged with the Charagma, okay? And so that's what Esau's coming with in his outer days, as he's at the end of the line, at the end of his blessing, all right? Jeremiah 50 and verse 21 again, go up against the land of Marathiam, even against it, and against the inhabitants of Pekod. Okay, when you go into the word Pekod in the blue letter, it means visitation. Okay, Pekod means visitation. All right. And the Lord is getting ready to visit this place by way of what? Well, before the missiles, okay, great judgments, all right, scourges as amendment, okay. It speaks of in Revelation 18 how the Lord is getting ready to bring famine, all right. Matter of fact, let's get it, okay, because the Babylon they will read of in Jeremiah chapters 50 and 51 is also Babylon the Great that you read of in Revelation 18, all right. So Revelation 18, and let's see, all right, all right, Revelation 18. And it says, let's see where I can start at. Yep, Revelation 18 and verse 8. It says, therefore shall her plagues come in one day. Okay, it's talking about Babylon the Great. America, it says, therefore shall her plagues come in one day. All right, mind you, when it says one day, it's not talking about one actual 24-hour day. It's talking about a period of time. Oh, was that? I don't have no change on me. Sorry about that. Uh, Revelation 18 and verse 8, it says, therefore shall her plagues come in one day, okay? Meaning what? A short period of time, all right, which is going to be what? Death and mourning and famine, okay? So the Lord's getting ready to visit, okay, Babylon the Great America, Pekod, as we read in Jeremiah 50, right? With what? As it says again, death, mourning, and famine. All right, and that's just name a few. Okay, because we know more. The Lord's going to visit this place for more things. Okay, the sword, pestilence. All right, teeth of wild beasts, blackouts, cyber attacks, bank shutdowns. Right, perplexity, and as a matter of fact, just recently, about a week ago, we saw a blackout take place out there in San Francisco. Okay, a blackout took place recently out there in San Francisco. Okay, where you had hundreds of thousands of residents out there in San Fran that pretty much were without power for a period of time. Okay, and that happened, just out of the blue, literally, upon a sudden, showing you how Yahweh Shema Shah can pretty much just shut off the power throughout this place. Using Esau Edom, of course. Okay, but that's ultimately all what? The will of Yahweh Shema Shai. Okay, what we saw last week out there in San Francisco with the power being shut off, all right, that shows how quickly and suddenly and easily Yahweh Shema Shai can pretty much just shut things down throughout the country. Okay, because when people are without power, that means what? They're without internet connection. Okay, they're without access to communicate and keep up with things that's going on in the world. And as well, okay, when the whole entire city is without power, right? Then that means what? Your supermarkets are without power, where people buy food at and resources at, right? Your gas stations are without power, which brings forth what? People aren't able to access gasoline to fill up within their vehicles, right? Uh, and of course, your different electric companies are without power, so people can't power their air conditioning, their heating, their household appliances, right? Your stove, your refrigerator, okay, your washing machine, your dryers, your computers, your TVs, okay, your Wi-Fi's and your modems and your routers in your house to access internet, okay, and even these different water companies, okay. When your different water companies are without power, then that means what? They can't supply water into the households. So you see how quickly and easily, a power outage, okay, and things like that can pretty much shut down the whole entire society, especially this modern society that we live in. All right, here in America, Babylon the Great, where everything pretty much runs off of electricity, internet, all these things. Okay, and these things are just a few examples of how the Lord is going to visit this place, okay, and bring all types of judgments. All right, blackout, okay, famine, perplexity, great death, okay, great slaughter, right, great tribulation, and as it speaks of in 2 Ezra 16, all these things are brought forth as scourges for amendment, okay, to change these people's minds, to instill the fear of the Lord upon these everyday people, especially primarily our people, okay, but even despite the Lord bringing all these things, okay, perplexity, people catching all kinds of hell financially, right, mentally, socially, all these things, okay, especially our people still don't repent. They still don't consider Yahweh Shalom Shah. They're still not seeking the Lord, okay, while he may be found. So the only plague left to come, okay, is ultimately the missiles, all right, as well as the return of Yahweh Shah with the holy angels to bring forth the fire of their own. Those lasers being shot off from the missiles, okay. So Jeremiah 15 verse 21 again, it says, "Go up against the land of Marathaim," okay, double rebellion. You look that word up in the Hebrew, all right, even against it, and against the inhabitants of Pekod, which means visitation, all right. It says, "Waste and utterly destroy after them, said the Lord Yahweh, and do according to all that I have commanded thee." It says, verse 22, "A sound of battle was in the land and of great destruction." Okay, so great destruction and great battle is getting ready to come to America, Babylon the Great. Okay, and as a matter of fact, speaking of, okay, Russia and China and World War III talk, right? Now, recently, I believe earlier this week, you had an article that came out, or some information that came out on the, throughout the internet and whatnot. All right, look it up real quick. All right, I'll pull this up. All right, now, this is from this is off of Reuters.com. And this article is from 5 days ago. All right, earlier this week. As you see from the title, it says exclusive. China likely loaded more than 100 ICBMs in silo fields, Pentagon says. Okay, so you had information going out earlier this week where China, okay, loaded up, all right, over 100 ICBM nuclear missiles, okay, into their silos, all right. And it says, all right, and it pretty much goes into it, but I'm not going to go on to this article. But yeah, China earlier this week loaded up over 100 ICBM, all right, which ICBM stands for what? Intercontinental, all right, ballistic missiles, okay, into their silo fields, all right, over 100. All right, now why would China, okay, a superpower like China, load up over 100 ICBM missiles into their silos across their countries? Okay, what you think that's all about? You know, because anytime a country around the world flexes their nuclear capability and flexes their nuclear missiles, that all represents what? They're gearing up for war. Okay, and who is China gearing up for war against? Babylon the Great, America. Okay, to perform the will of the Lord, which is what? Bring destruction upon this place, nuclear destruction. Okay, utterly burn this place down to a crisp, make it desolate. All right, and that's all the will of the Lord that's getting ready to perform upon Babylon the Great, America. Okay, look this back up. All right, so I'll read it again. Jeremiah 50 and verse 21 again, it says, "Go up against the land of Marathaim, even against it, and against the inhabitants of Pekod, waste and utterly destroy after them." Okay, and what type of power can utterly waste and destroy a whole entire land? Okay, because obviously when you go into secular history, the ancient Neo-Babylonian Empire wasn't made of utter waste and desolation. Okay, that kingdom was ultimately taken over by the Persians and the Medes. All right, and even when you look at the region where Babylon ruled over in ancient times, which is the region of Iraq, you still have people over there in that land to this very day. They have their own government, all right, their own society, their laws, their militaries, okay, their own religions, which is the religion of Islam, right? So you still have people inhabiting that land, that region to this very day. So the fact that we're reading right here in Jeremiah 50 about Babylon being made of utter destruction and made a waste, that's clearly not talking about the ancient Neo-Babylonian Empire. But this got to be talking about a future Babylon, which is what? Babylon the Great, America, the United States of America. And it says, uh, waste and utterly destroy after them, said the Lord Yahweh, and do according to all that I have commanded thee. A sound of battle was in the land and of great destruction. Okay? And the fact that you have countries like China, all right, Russia, as well as Russia, pretty much flexing their muscles against America, flexing their nuclear arsenal and their nuclear capability against America and against the West as a whole, shows what? That the dominance of Esau, Edom in the West, okay, especially here in America, Babylon the Great, is come to an end. Okay, this whole entire world is coming up against America and against the small heads. Even their European allies, the NATO and the EU, are coming up against America as well as the small heads. All right, and that's just another reason why, among many reasons why, we're seeing a beast system. Okay, NATO, Europe, okay, NATO and the EU coming up against America because of America's, undying support for the small hats, okay, fighting in all their wars, right? Basically being the whore to the small hats, and the small hats being America's pimp, right? Okay, all these things are leading to more and more division between Europe and America, and not to mention those sanctions that America put upon Russia, okay, at the start of the whole Russia-Ukraine war fiasco, okay, all those sanctions against Russia, all right, all they did was just hurt the EU, okay, they hurt America's European allies, okay, and further, push America's European allies to look at America with the side eye. You see that? And as it speaks of, real quick, let's get Obadiah, all right, the book of Obadiah 1, all right. Obadiah 1 and verse 7, it says, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. It says, the men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound unto thee. There is none understanding in him. All right. Now let's read that verse in the NLT. All right. Obadiah 1 and verse 7 in the NLT. It says, all your allies will turn against you. They will help to chase you from your land. Okay, so all of America's allies, okay, their NATO and EU allies, are getting ready to turn against America. And right now, slowly but surely, they're turning against America, especially over the small hats, okay, over Ukraine, all right. Which, mind you, what's going down there in Ukraine? More, shaky business going on involving the small hats, okay. Because even when you look it up, Ukraine is heavily populated with J-ish small hats. Okay, even Zelensky himself is a small hat. All right. So it says, all your allies will turn against you. They will help to chase you from your land. They will promise you peace while plotting to deceive and destroy you. See that? So all of America's allies are plotting to destroy America by doing what? Joining with America's enemies: Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, India, Pakistan. All right, the BRICS nations. Okay, the Lord's going to use America's European allies to aid in the destruction of America, as well as the destruction of the current state of Israel, right? Because that land has to be destroyed and made in other ways as well, by way of nuclear missiles. But now the only difference is the land of Israel is going to be built back up in the kingdom of heaven, because we have to return to that land, all right, and build that land back up to establish the headquarters of the kingdom of heaven, all right, the throne of David under Yahweh Shai, right? But America, Babylon the Great, the Lord's going to turn this place to an utter desolation, okay, to where it's uninhabitable. And even as it speaks of in Isaiah 13, talks about the Arabians shall not pitch tent here, all right? It says, they will promise you peace. They will promise you peace while plotting to deceive and destroy you. Your trusted friends will set traps for you, okay? And you won't even know about it. See that? So right now, America's European allies are setting traps for America, okay? And Babylon doesn't even know it, okay? Because right now you have Trump, all right? DJ Donald Trump, thinking that that NATO and the EU is afraid of him, or they reverence him to a certain extent. Even as of recently, Trump, Trump did this one interview recently where he said NATO and the EU calls him daddy. Okay, showing you how stout-hearted America is, how proud America is, right? But these things, okay, while America and Trump is boasting themselves against NATO and EU, okay, NATO and EU are pretty much plotting against this place. Okay, ultimately, what? Plotting to join with Russia, China, and America's enemies, the BRICS nations, to further do what? Aid in the destruction of America, Babylon the Great. Okay, we know as well, pursuant to Revelation 17, that it's going to fulfill, all right, the beast hating the whore. Okay, the beast, NATO and the EU hating the whore, America, Babylon the Great. You see that? So it's going back to Jeremiah 50 and verse 23. It says, "How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken?" Okay, and was ancient Babylon the hammer of the whole entire earth? All right, north, south, east, and west? No. Okay, the only kingdom to this day that's ever been a hammer throughout the whole earth, all right, been a dominant superpower throughout the whole composite of earth is America, Babylon the Great. But as it said, how is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? Meaning what? This place America is cut down, it's cast down and broken, it's fallen. Okay, broken meaning what? Divided up. Okay, America's dominance is now being challenged throughout the earth. All right, from these different countries and these different nations throughout the world. All right, ramping up their nuclear arsenal, their nuclear power. Right, making threats against America. Okay, even these weaker, smaller nations are puffing up against America. Okay, countries like North Korea. All right, Iran. All right, even Venezuela. Okay, even Venezuela is puffing up against America. Because what? They ultimately know, okay, Yahweh Shema Shah is putting it in their minds and in their hearts to know and understand that America's dominance and the dominance of the West is at an end. Okay, now the snare that the Lord has these other nations in is that they're thinking that they're going to aid in destroying America for them to become the next superpower and dominant power throughout the earth. All right, but little do they know that Yahweh Shema Shah as well has these other heathen nations that are snared in the trap as well. Because what? At the end of World War III, okay, at the end of World War III, Yahweh Shai and the elect are the ones that's going to become victorious and dominant at the when it's all said and done. Okay, the tabernacle of David. All right. It says Jeremiah 50 and 23 again. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How has Babylon become a desolation among the nations? All right, and as getting ready to come, Babylon, America is getting ready to become a desolation. All right, it says, verse 24, "I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon." Okay, and thou was not aware. So the Lord has a snare laid for Babylon the Great. Okay, as America through this Trump administration is trying to cling on and hold on to whatever little bit of pride that they have left. Okay, and even as of next year in 2026, okay, as of next year in 2026, all right, May of 2026 is going to mark America's basically May, June, July, whatever 2026 is going to mark America's 250th anniversary. Okay, it's going to mark America's 250th anniversary. All right, well, America so-called declared their independence from the British, right? And then eventually went on to become a dominant superpower throughout the earth. All right, you best believe that's going to have a lot of these Edomites here in America boasting in their pride. How America has been so-called independent and dominant throughout the country for nearly 250 years. Okay, and mind you as well, during America's, all right, during America's near 250-year history, okay, majority, about 90+% of America's so-called history has consisted of what? Wars, okay, violence. whether it be war here in the shores of America upon the tribes, northern and southern kingdom, okay, making war against Gad and Reuben, the so-called Native Americans, making war against Issachar, the so-called Mexicans, making war against Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, the so-called Negroes here in America that suffered chattel slavery, right? If Esau wasn't making war here in America, Babylon the Great, then he was making war somewhere else throughout the earth, okay? Invading different countries, bombing, destroying, okay, dropping the atomic bomb, right? Overthrowing governments, all right? Deriding strongholds, scoffing at kings, as it speaks of in Habakkuk, the first chapter, right? Setting up economic hitmen to overthrow governments and set up puppet governments to do the bidding in the interests of the West and the interests of America, right? That's all America's 250-year history has been all about. Rape, robbing, murder, all right, war, genocide, lies, deceptions, pseudoscience, false narratives, false education, and just total wickedness, okay, to all fulfill the working of Satan on the earth in these latter days. You see that? So Jeremiah 50:24 again, it says, I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon. Okay, and thou was not aware. The Lord has Esau Edom, who rules over Babylon the Great, in a trick bag. Okay, got Esau ramped up in his pride at an all-time high, and as Scripture speaks about in the book of Proverbs. Okay, pride goes before destruction. Okay, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Roughly paraphrasing. So the Lord has Esau Edom's pride lifted up at an all-time high in his latter days. Okay, mainly the elites of Esau Edom. Okay, just like the Lord did to Pharaoh at the tail end of ancient Egypt. Hardened Pharaoh's heart, raised up Pharaoh's pride at an all-time high, all for the purpose of what? For Yahweh Shemashah to show his power upon Pharaoh. Bring forth all those different plagues, right? Plaguing their animals, right? Their crops, sending the locust plagues, as well as the plague of darkness that you read of in Exodus. Those 3 days of darkness, right? Okay, smiting the waters and turning the waters to blood, right? The plague of flies, the plague of frogs, all those different plagues the Lord brought upon ancient Egypt, upon Pharaoh, okay, as the Lord was raising up Pharaoh's pride at an all-time high. You see that? So the Lord is doing the same thing to Esau Edom in these latter days. All right. Matter of fact, let's go back to 2 Ezra 15 again real quick. Second Ezra 15 and verse 10. It says, behold, my people is led as a flock to the slaughter. I will not suffer them now to dwell in the land of Egypt. Okay, and this is talking about the modern day spiritual Egypt, which is America. Okay, it says, verse 11, but I will bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm. Okay, and what is that mighty hand, stretched out arm that Yahweh, that the Most High Yahweh is getting ready to send? Okay, his right hand, Yahweh Shai, his holy arm, as the scripture speaks about. The scriptures also calls Yahweh Shai the holy arm of the Most High Yahweh. All right, and it says again, 2 Ezra 15 in verse 11 again, it says, but I will bring them with a mighty hand, all right, and a stretched out arm, and smite Egypt with plagues as before, and will destroy all the land thereof. So the Lord's going to smite this modern day Egypt with plagues as before. Okay, locusts, all right, blackouts and darkness. Okay, smiting the cattle of this place. All right, smiting the food. Systematically bringing down America, this modern day Egypt. All right, all for the purpose of what? The Lord getting ready to deliver the elect of his people out of this modern day Egypt. All right, because unlike the first Egypt, all right, the Lord is not going to deliver all of our people out of this place, okay? But instead, what? The Lord is going to deliver, all right, only the elect, okay, us the hopeful elect out of this modern day Egypt, right? Lord will not be of their number. And as well, just like the old Egypt, right? How is the Lord going to deliver his people, okay, the elect out of this modern day Egypt? With this angel, all right? That same angel that delivered us out of the first Egypt, which is Yahweh Shai, all right? that angel that had power to pardon transgression, as read of in the book of Exodus. Okay, well, guess what? The Lord's going to use this same angel, Yahweh Shai, to deliver us, the hopeful elect, out of this modern day Egypt. Okay, out of the hands of the modern day Pharaoh, which is Esau Edom. And, all right, in which the Apostle Paul alluded to that in Romans the 9th chapter, where he likened Esau Edom to the modern day Pharaoh. All right. Matter of fact, I'll read verse 12. 2nd Esdras 15 and verse 12, it says, Egypt shall mourn, and the foundation of it shall be smitten with the plague and punishment that Yahweh shall bring upon it. See that? Egypt shall mourn. America is mourning right now. Okay? The average Edomite here in America is mourning because they're seeing, all right, their beloved, their Lord and Savior, Donald Trump, that they were rooting and hollering for all throughout last year and all throughout this year, has now been proven to be a farce. Okay, as you know, Trump is showing more and more that he's all about, you know, he's in the pockets of the small hats, right? And you know, he's all about forwarding the bidding of the technocrats and the elites. Okay, forwarding more technocracy in the earth, right? You know, rubbing elbows with these different technocrats. You know, your Elon Musk, your Peter Thiels, right? Your Sam Altmans, your Gil Bates, okay? And none of these people that I just named and more are, you know, for you know, making America great and, you know, making America prosperous again and putting America first. No, they're all about ushering America into the NWO agenda. Okay, and we clearly see this guy Trump, you know, accelerating America, you know, to that agenda, while fooling you everyday American people. Okay, thinking that thinking that he's all about making America great and making the so-called middle class great, right? But yet he's still sending all these billions of dollars to Ukraine, to the state of Israel, sending billions of dollars to Argentina, right? Which mind you, who has Argentina has a heavy population of small hats. Again, okay, just as the president himself is a small hat. All right, the president down there in Argentina. Okay, so as these things are happening under this Trump administration, this modern day Egypt America is mourning. The average Edomite is mourning. You go on TikTok and social media, okay, and all you see is what? Videos of Edomites complaining, okay, complaining about division, complaining about inflation, complaining about the cost of living, okay, complaining about the lack of transparency within their government, okay, complaining about how Trump is putting so much support to the small hats and to Argentina and Ukraine, but yet it's putting the average American on a back burner, okay? You know, with these tariffs, that's putting more hell upon the middle class, okay? Ramping up more and more AI infrastructure that's taking more jobs, okay? Taking away people's livelihoods, all right? Taking over all sectors of life, right? These average American Edomites are recognizing that. And so therefore what? They're mourning, they're complaining, and ultimately they're through. You see that? And so it says again, 2nd Esdras 15 and verse 12 again, Egypt shall mourn, and the foundation of it shall be smitten with the plague and punishment that Yahweh Shema Shai shall bring upon it. That, and that's what it's all coming down to. It's just simply Yahweh Shema Shai punishing this place for all the punishments that this place has put upon us, his people. Okay, Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Hey, now, okay, as of 2025, and really from 2020 going forward, okay, now over these past few years, we've been slowly but surely seeing Yahweh Shema Shai now putting these curses upon our enemies, okay, these Edomites. Of course, starting with the average, everyday lower level Edomite, right? The so-called working class Edomites. But guess what? It's ultimately all going to climb up the ladder. Okay, these curses that the Lord is putting upon our enemies is ultimately going to climb up the ladder, all the way up to their elite sooner or later. You see that? But right now, we're seeing Egypt mourn. Okay, and as this place Egypt, all right, this modern day Egypt, America is mourning. Hey, we the hopeful elect are rejoicing because again, pursuant to the theme of today's camp, we see that, all right, the end, is the end of the line for Esau Edom. All right. And as a matter of fact, I'll continue reading. 2nd Esdras 15 and verse 13, it says, they that till the ground shall mourn, for their seed shall fail through the blasting of hail and with a fearful constellation. All right, so not only is America the modern day Egypt mourning, but as well it says, okay, they that till the ground shall mourn. And what does that speak to? The farmers here in America. Hey, over this past year, all right, these farmers across America, especially these Edomite, MAGA farmers that are all about Trump, this and the third, okay, they've been especially catching hell all throughout this year, okay, not receiving any profits, all right. These tariffs have been affecting them at high levels, right? And not to mention the deportations, okay, because the main people that's been working on these farms across America over these years were the northern tribes, okay, the so-called migrants, as Esau would call them, okay, the northern tribes, Issachar, right, the northern tribes working in these fields of these Edomite farmers, working working for cheap labor, right, under the table, okay, but now that that's all done away with, due to the deportation and all these things, now these farmers, okay, they till the ground are mourning. And even as it speaks of in Jeremiah 50, it says, there's a scripture that says, cut off the sower from Babylon, roughly paraphrasing it. These sowers being what? These farmers, right? These, agriculturalists, okay, people, these Edomites that own all these farmlands, that raise up all this cattle, right? Growing vegetables and fruits and crops and all these things that we buy out of the store. Hey, that's over with now, okay? That's come to an end, okay? So, going back, all right? Matter of fact, let's go here, okay? Let's get the book of Job. This is Job. Watch it. It's the book of Job, chapter 14. Job 14 and verse 5, it says, seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. All right? We clearly can apply that to Esau Edom, the so-called white man. All right? And let's read that same verse. Let's read that same verse in the NLT. All right? Job 14. Matter of fact, let's see. All right? This is Job 14 and verse 5 in the AMP Bible. All right? The AMP Bible. It says, since his days are determined, the number of his months is with you, okay, in your control, all right, and you have made his limits so he cannot pass his allotted time, okay. And again, speaking of Esau Edom, all right, speaking of Esau Edom, I'll read it again. Job 14 verse 5 in the AMP Bible. It says, since his days are determined, the number of his months is with you, in your control. See that? This devil Esau Edom is strictly in the control of Yahweh Shema Shah. Though he's presented himself throughout the earth as, trying to portray himself as God on the earth through his pseudoscience, through his sword, through his AI, right? Through his technology, his mass surveillance. Esau Edom is trying to portray himself as God on the earth, making it seem as if he has everything under his control and in his hand. But guess what? That's again all a part of Yahweh Shema Shai having his devil in a trick bag. Okay? Letting them think that he's in control. Letting them think that he can somehow use his left-hand power and his counterfeit power to upset the Lord's prophecy. But guess what? As it said again, Job 14 verse 5 in the AMP Bible, it says, since his days are determined, the number of his months is with you, in your control, and you have made his limits so he cannot pass his allotted time. See that? And that's what Esau Edom is trying to do through his pseudoscience, through his sword, his technology, AI, and all this left-hand power that he's been blessed with on the left-hand side. He's trying to surpass his bounds. All right, he's trying to surpass the limited time that the Lord has allowed him to rule. Okay, he's even going to go as far as literally fighting against Yahweh Shai and the holy angels when he returns. Okay, which speaks to what? That war in heaven that we read of in Revelation 12. Okay, Satan and his angels, which is what? Esau and his air force and military, fighting against Yahushua and the archangel Michael and the rest of the holy angels when Yahushua returns. Okay? That's how prideful this devil is in these latter days. Okay? He's going to try to upset the Lord's prophecy. Okay? Surpass his a lot of times that he's been allowed to rule, and literally fight against Yahushua when Yahushua comes back to put a brutal end to his wicked rulership. You see that? So wait, this devil Esau Edom, okay, he just got to go at the end of the day. All right? He seeks to rule, okay, by merging man with machine, sticking a charagma inside of mankind for the purpose of what? Mass global enslavement, okay, using AI and these technocrats everywhere, all right, mass surveillance, okay, to basically play God on the earth over people's minds. You see that? Controlling people's abilities to buy and sell, right? Social credit scores, constantly monitoring people, all right, surveilling people under their skin, all right, in their minds, right? He's basically trying to be the most high on the earth, all right? And he's basically through his left hand power and left hand technology, he's trying to rewrite prophecy and recreate creation. Okay, even as a matter of fact, as of recently, you had Trump roll out the whole Genesis mission, which Genesis speaks to what? Okay, in the beginning, right? And when you read primarily in Genesis, the first chapter, that gives you what? The history of the creation story. Okay, the generations of creation. The heavens and the earth being created. All right, the earth, the waters, the firmament, the trees, the herbs, the animals, the fowls of the air, right? So on and so forth. So the fact that, all right, so the fact that Esau Edom through this Trump administration has rolled out a so-called Genesis mission, right? They're basically telling you what? That they want to recreate creation, okay? Through AI, through scientific discoveries, right? Which is what? More pseudoscience, okay? More left-hand energy, more energy of Satan being done throughout the earth, okay? And mind you as well, all this AI and these AI data centers is further putting more hell upon the average American person. As you have information that you can look up online showing you that, okay, these AI data centers that are being built up across America is, causing people's electricity bills to go up more and more, right? As well as their water bills, because all these AI data centers, all right, are using up what? Heavy amounts of electricity, power, as well as heavy amounts of water, okay, which is causing people's bills to go up, their energy bills to go up, their water bills to go up, which is putting more of a strain upon the middle class, the so-called working class, right? But again, all these things are for the purpose of what? Esau Edom, okay, bringing people down to their knees, bringing people to a state of perplexity to pretty much bow to him in his NWO system, okay, as God, and ultimately take his charagma, okay? Let's get this, all right? Real quick, let's go to Sirach 42, and Sirach 42 and verse 18, it says, now this is talking about the power that the Most High has, right? But it says, Sirach 42 verse 18, he seeketh out the deep and the heart, and considereth their crafty devices, okay? For the Lord knoweth all that may be known, and he beholdeth the signs of the world. He declared the things that are past and for to come, and it revealeth the steps of hidden things. You see, and this is going into the power that the Most High has, right? But Esau Edom is seeking to gain this type of power on the left hand side, okay? Seeking out the deep, right? Seeking out the things of the heart, meaning the mind. Seeking to know all things that may be known, right? And as well, what? Using this AI pseudoscience to what? As verse 19, he declareth the things that are past and for to come, revealing the steps of hidden things. So Esau wants to use his pseudoscience and his AI to declare not only things that are past, all right, the things that happened throughout history, things that happened throughout ancient times, but also what? Okay, use his pseudoscience and his AI to declare future things. Okay, to use AI as a future, left-hand prophet. Okay, a future left-hand fortune teller, right? Using pseudoscience and artificial intelligence to falsely declare, okay, false prophecies and false future events, right? For the purpose of what? Deceiving people, and again, all right, they're fooling the mass of the people to think that he's God on the earth, right? They think that he's a higher power on the earth, okay, that's in control. But as we read in Job 14, that Yahweh Shema Shah is in control of this double, right? Yahweh Shema Shah is the one who's ultimately in control, because Esau Edom is just the villain within the Lord's story, okay? Matter of fact, let's get this. Let me get this. All right, Proverbs 16 and verse 4 says, the Lord had made all things for himself. See that? The Lord Yahweh Shema Shai made all things for himself. Okay, all things in life, whether seen or unseen, things on the earth, things in the heavens, right? Okay, all spirits, all people, all powers, whether seen or unseen, right? And the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai made all things for himself. And it says, yea, even the wicked, okay, even the wicked for the day of evil. So the Lord not only made all things for himself, but he also made the wicked. And of course, who's the wicked according to the Bible? Esau Edom, okay, known as the border of wickedness pursuant to Malachi 1 verse 4. Okay, the Lord made the wicked Esau Edom for the day of evil. Okay, for the purpose of what? Setting up Esau Edom to accelerate end time prophecies out of days, all right, to fulfill, all right, our last captivity as Israelites on the earth here in America, Babylon the Great, all right, and as well the Lord also raised up Esau Edom to revive the fourth beast system in Daniel 7, which is what? The ancient Greco-Roman Empire, okay, through the little horn that would come out of the fourth beast pursuant to Daniel 7. The Lord also raised up Esau Edom to do what? To fulfill his blessing, okay, to rule the fatness of the earth via the sword, all right, set up America along with NATO and the EU, okay, to eventually what? Roll out the NWO agenda, which we clearly see in these other days, and to ultimately come with the MOTB, the micro SEAP, which we also clearly see in these other days, all right, us the hopeful elect, and to ultimately kickstart off World War III, okay, which is going to usher in the return of Yahweh Shai, World War III, pursuant to 2nd Esdras 13th chapter, all right? So the Lord, as it said again, Proverbs 16 verse 4, the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai had made all things for himself, yea, even the wicked for the day of evil. You see that? So the Lord has his double Esau Edom, the wicked, completely in his control, in his hand. All right? Because also, as it says in the book of Job, let's go back to the book of Job real quick. Job 12 and verse 16, it says, with him, okay, with Yahweh Shema Shai, is strength and wisdom. All right. And it says, the deceived and the deceiver are his. You see that? The deceived and the deceiver are, his, belong to Yahweh Shema Shai. Okay. And of course, who's the deceiver? Esau Edom. Okay. Who comes on the earth to do the working of Satan on the earth in these latter days. Right. Come with all signs, wonders, and lying powers, pseudoscience. Okay. The MOTB, AI, all these things. All right. All these things the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai set up Esau Edom to do on the earth in these latter days, okay, to fulfill his will according to prophecy. And then eventually what? Take him down, destroy him, destroy his rulership, okay, and bring Esau Edom into captivity in the kingdom. All right, under Yahweh Shai and the elect. All right. All right, so let's get this. Let's go back to 2nd Esdras. Lock it for a second. All right. All right. So it's like, all right. So this is second Esdras. All right, let me get us some water real quick. Second Esdras chapter 11, and I'm gonna start at second Esdras 11. Start at verse 36. It says second Esdras 11 and verse 36. It says, "Then I heard a voice which said unto me, Look before thee and consider the thing that thou seest." Verse 37. "And behold, and lo, as it were a roaring lion chased out of the wood." Okay, and this roaring lion represents Yahweh Shai. Okay, the Lion of Judah, as it speaks of in Revelation the 5th chapter. All right, but as well, this roaring lion can also represent us, the hopeful elect. Okay, that come in the spirit of Yahweh Shai in these outer days, which is what? The spirit of prophecy. Okay, Revelation 19 and 10 says what? The testimony of Yahweh Shai is the spirit of prophecy. Okay, and who has the Lord set up in these outer days to declare prophecies in the earth in these outer days? Okay, it's men. Okay, us, the hopeful elect, the remnant, starting with the apostles and the bishops and the elders of great millstone, down to the least of us that are of the hopeful elect, as well as the men that labor before them, going back to our Bivens. Okay, Yahweh Shema Shai has raised up us, the hopeful elect, in the spirit of Yahweh Shai in his outer days, the spirit of prophecy. Okay, hey, and as a matter of fact, the scriptures even says in Proverbs, get it real quick, in the book of Proverbs. Yep, this is Proverbs chapter 28 and verse 1. It says, "The wicked flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous are bold as a lion." So you see that? So even the righteous, those of us that are of the hopeful elect, are likened to lions in the scriptures. All right, bold like lions. Okay, standing boldly and stiffly in the name of Yahweh Shema Shai, in the face of all that has afflicted us and made no account of our labors, like it says in Wisdom of Solomon 5 and 1, right? And doing what? Okay, testifying against Esau, Edom, the devil, okay, the so-called white man, testifying against his beast system and his image and his mark, singing a new song, right? Babylon the Great is fallen, and proclaiming what? Proclaiming that Yahweh Shema Shai is getting ready to bring judgment upon Esau, Edom, and this beast system ran by Babylon the Great. You see that? That's what we, the hopeful elect, boldly stand upon. The word of Yahweh Shema Shai via the spirit of prophecy, which speaks of what? Okay, the destruction and judgment upon Esau, Edom, as well as the victory of the elect of the nation of Israel through via Yahweh Shai. Lord will not be of their number. All right. So back in second Esdras 11 and verse 37 again, it says, "And I beheld, and lo, as it were a roaring lion chased out of the wood, and I saw that he sent out a man's voice unto the eagle." See that? So the lion, Yahweh Shai, sent out a man's voice unto the eagle. Okay, and that voice representing who? Us, the prophets, the men of the Lord. Okay, we represent the voice and a mouthpiece of Yahweh Shema Shai on the earth in these latter days. Okay, and it said again, "And I saw that he sent out a man's voice unto the eagle and said," and of course we can liken this eagle, all right, because when you're reading this chapter, all right, second Esdras, the 11th chapter, okay, the original context of this chapter is going into the ancient Western Roman Empire, right? Those 12 feathers and so on and so forth as this chapter goes into. But as well, we can also liken certain things in this particular chapter to America, Babylon the Great, which is the revival of Rome, okay, the revival of the ancient Greco-Roman Empire. As America, okay, what's one of the major ways that America models itself after ancient Greece and ancient Rome. Okay, well, one example is the eagle. All right, ancient Greece and ancient Rome represented themselves as the eagle. All right, that was the national symbol of their empires. Right. Well, what does America represent itself as? The bald eagle. Okay, and that's just one example among many examples of how America models itself after ancient Rome. Right, and mind you as well. Okay, another major common thing that Greece, ancient Rome, and modern day America all have in common is that it's all ran by Esau Edom, the so-called white man. Okay, so reading it again, Second Ezra 11 in verse 37, it says, "And I beheld and lo, as it were a roaring lion chased out of the wood, and I saw that he sent out a man's voice unto the eagle." Okay, which we liken this eagle today to America, Babylon the Great, and said, verse 38, "Hear thou, I will talk with thee, and the highest shall say unto thee, Art not thou it that remainest of the four beasts, whom I made to reign in my world, that the end of their times might come through them?" And of course, the four beasts make a reference to what? The four beasts spoken of in Daniel, the seventh chapter. Okay, the first beast being what? The ancient Neo-Babylonian Empire, right? The second beast being the ancient Persian and Mede Empire. The third beast being the ancient Greek Empire, right? And then a fourth beast being what? The ancient Western Roman Empire, okay? And so, as it says again, 2 Ezra 11, verse 39, "Art not thou it that remainest of the four beasts, whom I made to reign in my world, that the end of their times might come through them?" Okay, and ultimately, the end of time, all right, the end of time leading up to Yahweh Shah coming back will come through the revival of the fourth beast pursuant to Daniel 7, which is what? That little horn that will come out of the fourth beast. All right, matter of fact, let's go to it. Okay, let's go to Daniel 7. Daniel 7, Daniel chapter 7, and I'll just go straight to the point. Verse Daniel 7, verse 7, it says, "After this I saw in the night visions, behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly." Okay, speaking of the ancient Western Roman Empire, it says, "And it had great iron teeth." All right, great iron teeth, which represents what? Ancient Rome's strong military. Okay, its military power and military dominance in the ancient world 2,000 years ago. It says, it says, "It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it." Okay, and it had 10 horns. Right, the 10 horns of ancient Rome represents what? Its ancient vassal states. Okay, the Anglo-Saxons, the Lombards, the Visigoths, the Gauls. Okay, so on and so forth. When you go into that history, and it also says, "And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it." And how was ancient Rome diverse from all the other empires that reigned before it? Okay, the previous empires before Rome were all ruled by what? A monarchy and dynasties. Okay, kings, princes, nobles, right? But when the ancient Roman Empire came into power, it was ran by what? Okay, emperors slash Caesars. Okay, its Senate, right? Which were basically elected officials of that time in ancient Rome, right? So that was different from any other empire that ruled before Rome. Rome was ruled by Caesars, its Senate, right? Whereas empires before that were ran by what? It's monarchy, dynasties, kings, nobles, princes, noble families, right? And it continues to say in verse 8, Daniel 7, verse 8, "I considered the horns, and behold, there came up another little horn." That's like it. There came up among them another little horn, before whom there were three of the first horns uh, plucked up by the roots. Okay, and this little horn is speaking of the revival of the fourth beast, the revival of ancient Rome, which is what? America, Babylon the Great. Okay, and the three horns that it speaks of, they were plucked up from the roots, talking about the Spanish, the French, and the British. Okay, which were basically three colonial powers in Europe. Okay, hundreds of years ago, that America had to pretty much uproot in order to declare its so-called independence. Right, and uh, it says, and behold, in this horn, okay, in this little horn, America, Babylon the Great, it says, were eyes like the eyes of a man, okay, and a mouth speaking great things. You see that? So in this little horn, America, Babylon the Great, were eyes like the eyes of a man. Speaking of what? America's, different inventions, right? Its technology, okay, all these things that America's has invented and built up to boast itself against Yahweh Shema Shai. And as it said, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. And America has most certainly spoke great things against Yahweh Shema Shai. Okay, all manner of blasphemy, deception, okay, false narratives, lies, false education, okay, false religion, okay, and especially spoken great words against his people, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, the true Israelites, okay. Esau has pushed a narrative that we're black, right, niggas, Hispanics, wetbacks, savages, all right, low IQs, inferior, right, disposable, okay, and that's just to name a few. All right, that's just to name a few examples of how Esau Edom has spoke great words against the Lord's people. And of course, how is Esau Edom through America, Babylon the Great, has spoken great words against Yahweh Shema Shai? Okay, God bless America. But the Heavenly Father is not blessing this goddamn place, man. Okay, this place, America, was built up of in the bloodshed and the genocide of the Lord's people. All right, along with blasphemies against Yahweh Shema Shai, using this, Christianity and Catholicism to blaspheme against the Lord and speak great words, right? The picture of so-called white Jesus, Cesare Borgia, for example, all right, and as well teaching the whole evolution theory within the school system, which is completely against the Bible, right? Completely against the creation story, okay, along with many other things, all right, many other ways that this place has blasphemed against Yahweh Shema Shai. Has blasphemed with pseudoscience technology, okay? Through Esau's pseudoscience technology is basically crucify Yahweh Shai spiritually, okay? Crucifying manhood, crucifying righteousness, crucifying order, crucifying morals, right? Crucifying standards, okay? Now this devil Esau Edom, especially here in America, is taking it a step further by, adding up his blasphemy against Yahweh Shema Shai by using his pseudoscience technology to now present himself as God on the earth, okay? And pretty much exile the Most High and his Son throughout the earth, okay? Recreate creation, right? Recreate the Lord's story to where Esau can get the victory and we get the Israelites get the L, okay? That's how far this devil's pride is lifted up at an all-time high in these outer days. But it says, Daniel 7 and verse 8 again, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Verse 9, I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit. And of course, the Ancient of Days being who? The Most High Yahweh himself. Okay, the Supreme Being, the Heavenly Father. All right, and it says, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. All right, showing you that the Most High has Afro woolly hair, just like so-called Negroes, right? Which Christians don't want nothing to do with that. But it says, uh, and his throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. Okay, and the wheels talking about what? The chariots, the so-called UFOs, which Esau Edom calls which Esau calls UFOs. All right, which again is another example of how Esau Edom here in America is blaspheming, is speaking great words against Yahweh Shema Shai. Okay, blaspheming the angels, calling the angels aliens in space. blaspheming the chariots, calling them so-called UFOs, which according to the Bible, okay, they're easily able to be identified according to the Bibles. Okay, they're known as the chariots of Yahweh Shemashai, all right, also known as the chariots of Israel when you read in the book of Kings, okay, and they're also known as the chariots of salvation when you read in Habakkuk the 3rd chapter, okay. So the so-called UFOs, as Esau would call them, are they're plainly identified in the scriptures. But guess what? It's only made plain to us, the hopeful elect. Meanwhile, to the rest of this world, including the average Christian that has the Bible in their hands, okay, the chariots are a stumbling block to them. You see that? So, uh, verse 10, Daniel 7, verse 10, it says, a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him, and it says, thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were open. Okay, and the thousands, and the tens of thousands represent what? The large multitude of angels in the heavens. Okay, the millions upon millions of angels that minister to Yahweh Shemashai in the heavens. All right, it says, verse 11, I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake. Okay, the little horn, America, Babylon the Great. It says, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. See that? And that's the ultimate judgment upon America. Okay, America being destroyed and giving to the burning flame, which is going to come by way of what? Nuclear missiles. Okay, ICBM nuclear missiles. All right, as well as what? Hypersonic nuclear missiles. Which, hey, I showed earlier in the article, China has them ramped up right now in their silos. Okay, hundreds of ICBM nuclear missiles ramped up in the silos of China. All right, as well. Russia has a large arsenal of nuclear missiles. Right, Iran has nuclear missiles. North Korea, India, Pakistan, so on and so forth. Okay, the Lord is raising up all these nations throughout the earth to ramp up their military power. Okay, to put down it to turn their plowshares into swords, as it speaks of in I believe Jeremiah, Joel the 3rd chapter, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, causing the weak to say that they're strong. Okay, and ramping up these militaries of these nations to ultimately wage war against America, Babylon the Great. Okay, and give this place to a burning fire. All right, and it says again, uh, Daniel 7, verse 11, I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. All right. Verse 12. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. Yeah, they're speaking of how, ultimately, after the Edomites are destroyed and eradicated, after the first 1,000 years in the kingdom, the rest of these heathen nations are going to have the luxury to continue on earth. Okay? The heathen are going to dwell on the earth. Okay? They're going to have lands. They're going to have families. Right? They're going to have their own little settlements here and there. But they're going to be under our jurisdiction, under our authority. Right? They'll be able to have land, have cattle, have, vineyards and all of that. As long as what? As long as they bless us, okay, we'll bless them. And if they curse us, then we'll curse them. Okay, we'll have the ability to bring forth a drought on the lands of the heathen in the kingdom. And Zechariah 14 chapter speaks to that. Okay, how if the family of Egypt, come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles, if I'm not mistaken, will basically have the ability to to bring a drought upon their lands. Okay, showing that in the kingdom through spiritual powers via those new bodies, we as Israelites are going to have power over weather modification, so to speak. The power to send rain or stop rain, power to send snow or stop snow. Okay, power to to send down a scorching earth, a scorching sun. It's like it. All right, 444. Call Allah Yahweh Shema Shah. We'll have power over the sun to make the sun burn hotter upon the earth or certain parts of the earth, and as well the power to make certain parts of the earth cooler. Okay, so these heathen, after that first 1,000 years in the kingdom, they're going to have their lives prolonged. They'll be able to continue living in the kingdom, but just under our authority, under our jurisdiction. Okay, the throne of David. All right. And it says, verse 13, Daniel 7 and 13, I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven. Okay, the Son of Man obviously talking about who? Yahweh Shai, coming with the clouds of heaven. Okay, remind you, all right, I'll continue reading, all right, Daniel 7 and verse 13, again it says, I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven. Okay, the clouds of heaven talking about what? The chariots, what Esau calls so-called UFOs, right? And it says, and came to the Ancient of Days, the Most High, showing you that the Heavenly Father and the Son are two separate persons, all right? For Yahweh Shai to be presented before the Most High, the Ancient of Days, shows plainly that that the Most High and the Son are two separate persons. Hey, but guess what? Even though, even with that being plain unto us, the hopeful elect, right? The Most High and the Son being two separate persons, guess what? That's a stumbling block. That's even a stumbling block to the wicked of this world, okay? Many of these Christians stumbled at the Most High and the Son being two separate persons, right? But, nonetheless, it says again, Daniel 7 and 13, I saw in the night visions and testing 1 2 1 2. Still good. All right. Bear with me for a second. Get everything set back up. Well, Slocky about that. Russell Wind blow just a minute ago. All right. Spirits like the wind out here. But nonetheless, it's like we're still good. So, hey, the show must go on. All right. So, going back to Daniel 7. All right. Back in Daniel 7. Daniel 7 and 13 again. It says, I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven and came to the Ancient of Days. All right? It says, to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. Right? And again, showing you that the Most High and the Son are two separate persons, two separate entities. Okay? All right, but mind you, all right, Daniel 7 and 13, okay, takes place immediately after after Acts the first chapter. When you're reading that chapter, okay, let's go to it real quick. Acts 1. Acts 1 and Acts 1 and I'll just go straight to verse 8. Right? Acts 1 verse 8. This is Yahushua speaking to the disciples who turned apostles. Okay. It says, but ye shall receive power after that the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and ye shall be witnesses, and ye shall be witnesses unto me, both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and in Samaria and unto the uttermost part of the earth. When you go into the understanding of the uttermost part of the earth, that's ultimately speaking to here in the West, here in America. Okay? Because, of course, when you read in the scriptures, did the apostles go to the uttermost part of the earth here in the West in the scriptures? No. So eventually, how would the disciples who turned apostles go out and preach the gospels, okay, to the uttermost parts of the earth, meaning here in the West? The only explanation would be is that they would have to come back in reincarnation in these latter days. All right. The only way to explain that is understanding reincarnation. Hey, which that's another thing that's made plain to us, the hopeful elect, right? And stumbling blocks to the rest of this world. Reincarnation. Okay? But it says, Acts 1 verse 8 again, but ye shall receive power after that the Holy Spirit has come upon you. Okay, which the apostles received that in Acts chapter 2. All right, the power to speak in different tongues, languages, right? And it says, and ye shall be witnesses unto me, both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and in Samaria and unto the uttermost part of the earth. All right. And verse 9 it says, and when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. You see that? So as Yahushua was, dialoguing with the apostles on the earth for one last time, the next thing you know, the next minute later, a cloud, okay, a chariot, received Yahushua up, basically beamed them up, okay? And when we go back to Daniel 7 and 13 again, it tells you exactly what happened right after Yahushua was taken up in his cloud, in the chariot. Daniel 7 and 13 again. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven. All right. The same cloud that we just read of in Acts 1, right? And it says, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. Okay, so immediately after Yahushua was taken up in a cloud from the apostles, okay, he was brought before the Most High Yahweh. Okay, and what happened up there in the heavens at that particular encounter? It says, verse 14, and there was given him dominion and glory and the kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. You see that? So immediately when Yahushua was brought back up to the Most High Yahweh, okay, to receive the ultimate crown of life, right? To be brought back to the right hand of the Most High, okay? He was ultimately what? Promised a kingdom, a dominion, all right? Where all nations would serve and bow to him, right? An everlasting kingdom, an everlasting dominion, okay? And Yahushua is going to establish that very promise when he returns on the earth in these latter days, okay? But as it went into in Daniel 7, okay, Yahushua coming back to execute his dominion and his rule via the kingdom of heaven, the throne of David, is going to come, all right, after the destruction of this little horn that will come out of the fourth beast, which is what? America, Babylon the Great, okay? The revival of the fourth beast, the revival of ancient Rome, okay? After this place is destroyed, Yahushua is going to set up the kingdom of heaven, an everlasting dominion, an everlasting rule, the throne of David, all right? And so let's go back. Hey, if it's one thing that these people here in America are dead serious about, it's goddamn folly. Okay, especially around this time of year, so-called holiday season, right? Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, so-called New Year's, right? People get dead serious on folly when it comes to this time of year. Okay, no care, no fear of the Lord, no care of what they're so-called celebrating, right? Because clearly, that's at this point in 2025, there's all kinds of information you can look up, all right, in the libraries or on the internet or whatnot that tells you that Christmas, okay, is not a biblical holiday. The Lord was not born on December 25th in the dead middle of the winter. Okay, even ChatGPT tells you that Christmas is not a biblical holiday and that the Lord wasn't born on December 25th. So, despite that information widely being available throughout the earth, why do people still celebrate this wicked high holiday? Okay, because just to rebel against Yahweh Shema Shai, eat, drink, marry, be given into marriage, and just indulge in folly. Okay, ultimately until the missiles come and destroy this place. You see that? But now let's go back to Second Ezra 11 and Second Ezra 11 and verse 39. It says, "Art not thou it that remainest of the four beasts, whom I made to reign in my world, that the end of their times might come through them?" All right. Verse 40. "And the fourth came and overcame all the beasts that were past, and had power over the whole, world with great fearfulness, and over the whole compass of the earth." It's like it. And it's like it. "And over the whole compass of the earth with much wicked oppression." Now, when or how did ancient Rome, all right, this fourth beast that we're going into, eventually have power over the whole entire compass of the earth? Okay, that didn't happen 2,000 years ago. All right, so showing you what, that eventually, ultimately, ancient Rome would have to be rebuilt back up again later on in the future for it to fulfill rulership over the whole entire earth. And how was ancient Rome rebuilt in his outer day to rule over the whole entire earth? Through the little horn that we read up in Daniel 7. America, Babylon the Great. Okay, this is the revival of Rome. This is the revival of Greece. Okay, starting from the Renaissance period of the 1400s up until now. Okay, which Renaissance, when you go into it, it means what? Rebirth. Okay, the rebirth of ancient Greco-Roman philosophies and customs and ideas and values into the earth all over again. Basically, the revival or the rebirth of Edomite supremacy in the earth all over again. You see that? So it says again, Second Ezra 11 in verse 40, "And the fourth came and overcame all the beasts that were past, and had power over the world with great fearfulness." Okay, and over the whole compass of the earth with much wicked oppression. All right, this devil, Esau Edom, through America, Babylon the Great, has been ruling the earth with much wicked oppression. Okay, hey, look at the issue with the whole migrant situation, right? You got Esau these other days making a whole fuss about migrants and immigration and all these things. But when you go into it, okay, when you go into the number one root cause of all this migration, okay, coming into here in America as well as throughout Europe, okay, what's been the main root cause of all this immigration over these years? When you go into it, colonization, okay, Esau Edom, going into these different countries where these migrants are coming from, all right, going all throughout Mexico, going all throughout Central America, all right, South America, going all throughout the Middle East, okay, waging war, bombing, committing genocide, okay, all right, committing all kinds of war crimes, right, and as well what, toppling and overthrowing their governments, setting up puppet governments, exploiting the people of those lands that he's invading, right, gaining control over their resources, their oil, their natural minerals that's in their lands, their gold, their silver, their coal, their copper, their lithium, right, and so when these people in these different lands that Esau invades, right? When they see that they're living in their lands, but they're catching all kinds of hell, and they don't have free access to the things that naturally come out of their land, they say to themselves, "What? Well, you know what? I might as well move to America or move to somewhere in Europe, okay? Because all of the resources of our land are ending up in those countries. And so when they come over here, okay, to so say find a better life, get a job, this and the third, okay, take care of their families, the Esau gets mad at them and tells them go back to where they come from. But meanwhile, the lands and the countries where they come from, they aren't able to prosper, all right, in their lands because you devils are over there in their lands, taking all of their resources, okay, and overthrowing their governments, all right, and implementing all kinds of left-hand philosophies and feminism and alphabet agenda in their lands as well. To not only financially corrupt them, but also mentally and morally corrupt them and spiritually corrupt them. That's how this devil operates. You see that? So it says again, Second Ezra 11 and verse 40 again. And the fourth came and overcame all the beasts that were past and had power over the world with great fearfulness and over the whole compass of the earth with much wicked oppression. Okay, ancient Rome would fulfill that in these latter days through America. That would revive it. Okay, with much wicked oppression. And mind you, the whole migrant situation is just one example. All right, of this past. All right, the whole migrant situation is just one example among many examples of Esau's wickedness in the earth in these latter days. Okay, and let's not forget. Okay, children going missing everywhere, people coming up missing everywhere within Esau's system, right? To end up in the hands of what? Their elites and their left hand priesthoods that rub elbows with their elites, right? Their Freemasons, their Rosicrucians, their Jesuits, and all these things. Okay, to do what? Perform all right human sacrifice, right? Odious works, okay? BLOOD drinking, right? Doing all kinds of witchcraft and sorcery, okay? That's another major example of how Esau Edom is ruling the earth with wicked oppression, okay? Here it is, Esau has all this surveillance set up everywhere, okay? AI set up all over the place, satellites in space, okay? Surveilling the earth, all right? Satellites in space, they can look down upon the earth and damn near see a fly or an ant creeping upon the earth, but yet somehow for some reason these same satellites can't see and track all these children that's going missing everywhere, every year, right? All these PDF files that's wiggling across the earth, getting off scot free from their wickedness, not facing any consequences for their actions, right? Not being brought to justice, not being put in jail, not being ultimately sent back to the spirit world for their PDF file activity, right? Esau has all this surveillance set up in the earth to track and control the average person walking around, right? But for some reason, he can't use that same technology to track all these children going missing, to find all these PDF files that's going throughout the earth, all right, snatching up all these children, snatching up all these people, doing all kinds of odious works and witchcraft, right? And again, that's just another example of how of Esau Edom ruling the earth with wicked oppression. All right, and even as a matter of fact, this whole thing with the Epstein situation, okay, as this Trump administration has been dangling the whole Epstein situation before these people's faces, the Epstein files and this and the third. Okay, they recently so say came out, leaked certain files of the Epstein files. They had Bill Clinton sitting in the tub with no shirt on, right next to Epstein. We had Michael Jackson mingled in the whole situation, right? But now, as of lately, you can clearly see that the whole Epstein situation is simply being used as a distraction to cover up even more wickedness that Esau has going on behind the scenes. And mind you, that whole Epstein situation was a whole world of wickedness within itself. But guess what? This man Esau, the devil himself, has done so much wickedness throughout the earth to where something like the Epstein situation is just a distraction, okay, to hide the wickedness that he has going on behind that, okay, showing you how much wickedness and evil, all right, that this devil has going on throughout the earth, okay, behind closed doors. That's why this man just got to be stopped, okay? Yahweh Shema Shai has got to take this man down, Lord willing, in 2026, Lord willing, okay? It says, 2nd Ezra 11 and verse 40 again, and the fourth came and overcame all the beasts that were past, and had power over the world with great fearfulness, and over the whole compass of the earth with much wicked oppression. Okay? And so long time dwelt he upon the earth with deceit. This devil has been able to dwell and rule on the earth for a long time. Okay? Hundreds of years, generations, with nothing but what? Deceit. Okay? Lies, pseudoscience, false narratives, false education, genocide, great robbery and murder, colonization, right? But it says, verse 41, for the earth hast thou not judged with truth. Okay, Esau, Edom doesn't judge this earth with truth. Okay, and why do you think Esau, Edom, via the small hats, okay, is getting ready to crack down, right, on social media, on YouTube, throughout the internet, against people that have certain talking points. Okay, people that they deem as seat theorists, right, or anti-Sem people, right, especially against us, the hopeful elect, the prophets. Okay, Esau, Edom is getting ready to wage war against truth because what? As I said, he has not judged the earth with truth. Okay, and as I've been saying for these past few weeks, the number one threat on the earth against Edomite supremacy is not the sword or war, because Esau already dominates in those fields. That's his blessing, the sword. But instead, the number one threat against Edomite supremacy is truth. Okay, truth is the number one threat against this devil Esau, Edom, and his wicked rulership. And again, that's why Esau wants to make a man an offender for a word, right? He wants to crack down on those that are of upright conversation, okay? He wants to come up against anybody that he labels as anti-Sem and sea theorists and this, that, and the third, okay? Because truth sprung up in his outer days is the number one threat against Esau and his wicked rulership, okay? Because Esau knows that truth is the main thing that's casting him down, all right, and making him small among the heathen, as it speaks of in Obadiah, right? All before Yahweh Shema Shai physically casts this man down upon the return of Yahweh Shai, okay, via the chariots, right, the missiles, okay. Truth is leading to Edomite supremacy being rooted out of the earth, okay, and of course it all starts with Yahweh Shema Shai sending down the Holy Spirit to his men, to his prophets, all right, us the hopeful elect, starting with the apostles and the bishops and the elders of Great Millstone, as well as the men that labor before them, okay, all the way down to the least of us that's of the hopeful elect. Lord willing, I be the number, all right? So it says, verse 42, 2nd Ezra 11, verse 42, for thou hast afflicted the meek, thou hast hurt the peaceable, thou hast loved liars, and destroyed the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit, and has cast down the walls of such as did thee no harm. And so any and everybody on the earth, whether it be of our nation or even amongst the heathen, okay, any and every nation of people on the earth that's ever tried to let this pass, okay, any and every nation of people that has ever tried to make some type of peace with Esau, okay, live peaceably with Esau, trying to make particular deals and treaties with Esau, Esau has destroyed and broken every last one of them, okay, from what he did to Gad and Reuben and the northern tribes when Esau came over here to the so-called Americas, all right, to what Esau is doing with all these other heathen nations throughout the earth, okay. Anytime any nation that's tried to make some type of peace or deal with Esau's completely destroyed it and tried to and fucked over them basically, okay, breaking particular deals, breaking particular treaties, committing all kinds of war crimes, right? As a matter of fact, the scriptures even says, is that Isaiah? Let's see. Let's see. Yep. Now, I'm going to read this again, All right, and I'm gonna back it up with a precept in Isaiah, 2nd Ezra 11, and verse 42 again. It says, "For thou hast afflicted the meek, thou hast hurt the peaceable, thou hast loved liars and destroyed." All right, thou hast loved liars. See that? Everything that Esau Edom has built this system on these outer days is all built upon lies, deceptions, blasphemy, right? And it says, "Thou hast loved liars and destroyed the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit, and hast cast down the walls of such as did thee no harm." All right, now I have this real quick. This is Isaiah chapter 33 and verse 1. It says, "Woe to thee that spoilest, and thou was not spoiled." Okay, nobody spoiled Esau, Edom in his outer days. All right, nobody's ever tried to really and truly wage war against Esau, right? To take down the Edomite. Okay, for the most part, pretty much all nations throughout the earth have tried to make some type of peace with Esau, Edom. Okay, make deals with them, trade with them, right? Rub elbows with them. But any and every nation that's always tried to make some type of deals or peace with Esau, Edom, Esau has always spoiled them, right? Fucked over them. So it says again, Deuteronomy 33 verse 1. "Woe to thee that spoilest, and thou was not spoiled." Woe means destruction, calamity, ruin. And that's what's getting ready to come to Esau, Edom, and his rulership. Destruction, calamity, ruin. Build what? World War III, thermonuclear missiles, along with the chariots of Yahweh and the holy angels. It says, "And dealest treacherously, and they dealt not treacherously with thee." You see that? These heathen haven't dealt treacherously with Esau, Edom. All right, these heathen aren't trying to fuck over Esau and America and NATO and the EU and all these things. And instead, what? Esau is fucking over them. All right, going into their lands, invading their countries on these false pretexts. Under the guise of fighting terrorism or stopping crime, stopping drug dealers, and all these things. Okay, but really all for the purpose of what? Gaining control over their resources, their lands, their natural resources, their minerals, their oil reserves, toppling their governments, all right, setting up puppets within their countries to do the bidding of the West, right, dealing treacherously, right, and it says, uh, "And when thou shalt cease to spoil, thou shalt be spoiled." You see that? And we're in a time when Esau is ceasing to spoil. Okay, again, look at what's going on down there in Venezuela. Esau, through the Trump administration, thought that they were just going to roll upon Venezuela, bomb their ships, and steal their oil tankers and get off scot-free, right? Well, now we see China, along with Russia, is now getting involved with that situation, okay? And getting ready to help Venezuela wage war against America, okay? And spoil this place. You see that? So it says, uh, "When thou shalt cease to spoil," meaning what? When Esau's dominance will come to an end, right? It says, thou shalt be spoiled," meaning you're gonna be spoiled, right? It says, "And when thou shalt make an end to deal treacherously," you see that? When thou shalt make an end to deal treacherously, Esau's at the end of the line, right? "And when thou shalt make an end to deal treacherously, they shall deal treacherously with thee." And hey, as we read in Obadiah, the first chapter earlier, even Esau's own allies are going to deal treacherously with them. Okay, lay a snare against America and aid in destroying America by joining with America's enemies: Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, so on and so forth, the BRICS nations. Okay, so hey, as Esau Edom has dealt treacherously and spoiled the whole world, now this whole world is getting ready to deal treacherously against Esau Edom and spoil Esau Edom. You see that? And take this man and aid in taking this man down to ultimately what? Fulfill the will of Yahweh Shema Shai, and for the kingdom of heaven to be established and the throne of David to be established. Okay, to spoil and rule over these heathen nations, right? So going back to Second Ezra, verse 11 and verse 42 again. "For thou hast afflicted the meek, thou hast hurt the peaceable, thou hast loved liars, and destroyed the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit." Okay, "and hast cast down the walls of such as did thee no harm." Okay, verse 43. Therefore is thy wrongful dealing come up to the highest, and thy pride unto the mighty. So all of Esau Edom's wrong dealings, his injuries, his deception, his wars, his genocide, his colonization, right? All this wickedness that Esau has done in the earth inside of days has all come up to Yahweh Shem Shai. And hey, and that goes hand in hand with Revelation 18, which speaks of Babylon the Great. It talks about what? How Babylon's sins have reached up unto the heavens. Okay? Babylon the Great, America's sins, okay, ran by Esau Edom, have reached up to the highest, up to the heavens, to Yahweh Shem Shai. Okay? Which is why we see the Lord visiting this kingdom, visiting the rulership of Esau Edom, casting Esau Edom down, right? Bringing down the dominance of the West, dominance of America, okay? And setting this place up for ultimate utter destruction. Okay? It says, verse 44, second Ezra 11 and 44. The highest also hath looked upon the proud times, and behold, they are ended. You see that word again, ended. Okay? The Lord hath looked upon the proud times of Esau Edom via America, Babylon the Great. And as I said again, the highest also hath looked upon the proud times, and behold, they are ended, and his abominations are fulfilled. See that? So Esau's time has come to an end. All right, he's at the end of the line. He's at the end of his rulership, the end of his blessing, right? The end of him spoiling and dealing treacherously throughout the earth, right? And wickedness as a whole throughout the earth is coming to an end. All right, wickedness is being fulfilled on the earth these latter days. All right, for the purpose of what? For righteousness to be fulfilled via what? The return of Yahweh Shai. Okay, establishing the kingdom of heaven, the throne of David. Well, we as Israelites, okay, us the hopeful elect, are going to rule under Yahweh Shai. Okay, ruling over the heathen nations with the rod of iron via what? The laws and the commandments. For the purpose of what? Righteousness to flourish throughout the earth once again. Okay, for the earth to be brought back to paradise again. Eden. It says, 2 Ezra 11 and 44 again. The highest also hath looked upon the proud times, and behold, they are ended, and his abominations are fulfilled. Verse 45. And therefore appear no more thou eagle. Okay? Appear no more thou eagle, nor thy horrible wings, nor thy wicked feathers, nor thy malicious heads, nor thy hurtful claws, nor all thy vain body. Okay? Verse 46. It says that all the earth may be refreshed and may return. Okay, return to what? Return back to Eden again, to paradise again. Okay, under Yahweh Shai, the throne of David, of course. It says that all the earth may be refreshed and may return, being delivered from thy violence, and that she may hope for the judgment and mercy of him that made her. See that? And it's all going to take place after the Lord destroys Esau, Edom, and his wicked kingdom. Babylon the Great, okay, gives this place to a burning fire via nuclear war and World War III, okay, and deliver us, the hopeful elect, out of this man's hand, okay. And again, all these things that we went over, all right, in this camp via Bible prophecy, all speaks to what? Again, the end of the line for Esau, Edom, okay. And of course, we know that Esau is not going to go down without a fight, because as the scripture says, all right, in Revelation 12, right, because as Esau, Edom, as he's been blessed with the sword, right, okay, military power, weaponry, okay, advanced weapons and all these things, and when the Lord returns and takes this man down, Esau, Edom is not going to go down without a fight. And even with this truth being sprung up, okay, with this truth being sprung up via Bible prophecy, okay, Esau is trying to combat the truth, which again is why Esau is getting ready to crack down upon social media, crack down on the internet, okay, against any and everybody that has a message against the small hats, that has a message against this NWO agenda, right, and against every part of Esau's rulership. Okay, the scripture says what? In Revelation 12 and verse 12, it says, "Therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil has come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he had but a short time." See that? So Esau, Edom is getting ready to come down with great wrath. Okay, mass persecution, mass accusation. All right, making a man an offender for a word. Okay, great insurrection against them that fear the Lord, as it speaks of in 2 Ezra 16. Okay, all because what? Esau knows that he has but a short time left. He knows that he's at the end of the line for his rulership. But guess what? The beauty of it is that, all right, as Esau's getting ready to come down with great wrath, okay, this is also in Revelation 12 and verse 11. It says, and they overcame him, okay, who's the they? Us, the hopeful elect. And who's the him? Esau, Edom, who rules over this Babylon the Greek, the revival of the ancient Greco-Roman system. It says, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, Yahweh Shai, all right, and by the word of their testimony. See that? And they loved not their lives unto the death. Okay, so as Esau's getting ready to come down with great wrath, all right, and crash out and blame and point the fingers at everybody for the collapse of his empire, and guess what? When it's all said and done, the victory is already written. Okay, the elect are already written to overcome this beast system and its image and its mark. Okay, through what? Being covered by the blood of Yahweh Shai, the Lamb, and as well this testimony that we preach. Okay, this testimony that we preach out against this beast system and its image and its mark, and against Esau's rulership as a whole throughout the earth. Okay, and because if we, the hopeful elect, are likened to witnesses in the scriptures, right? Okay, and what does a witness have? A witness has a testimony. Well, guess what? We, the hopeful elect, we're under witness protection from on high. Okay, witness protection from the fugitive and the vagabond. Okay, Esau, Edom, who's getting ready to come down with great wrath, all because what? He's being caught, he's been found, right? He has nowhere left to hide with his wickedness. It's a shameful spewing all over his glory. All right, and Esau's getting ready to crash out. He's getting ready to go down. All right, but he's not going down without a fight. And so the Lord's going to come back and basically take the fight out of him. All right, let's get this. I'll probably end it off on this. Isaiah 34. Isaiah 34 and verse 5. It says, for my sword, this is the Lord speaking right here. Isaiah 34 verse 5. He says, for my sword shall be bathed in heaven. All right, what is the sword talking about in this verse? The missiles, the ICBM missiles being shot off across the ends of the earth, okay, in the heavens, right, in the skies. And it says what? For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea. Who's Idumea? Esau, Edom. Idumea is the Greek way of saying Edom. All right. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea and upon the people of my curse, which is Esau, Edom, again, to judgment. All right. So judgment is already written for Esau, Edom. Okay, destruction, and as well, victory is also already written for us, the hopeful elect. Okay, through the blood of Yahweh Shai and his testimony that we have. Okay. So, yeah. So with that, Lord willing, this camp speaking was edifying. Before I close out, I want to say, Call Halal Yamla, Yahweh, Shem Yahweh Shai, Shem Harakak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone that I learned this truth from. And also peace and salutations to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. All right, Kwam Yasha'Allah, Abad Babal. And until next time, Lord willing, Shabbat Shalom. All right.